Are you going to be okay pitching in a game that doesn't have do-or-die ramifications or clinch ramifications attached to it? And then in all seriousness, what have you learned about yourself in these two very successful starts that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess to answer the first part, I feel like this game is every bit as big as those elimination games. You know, you look at it like a count of an at-bat, that 1-1 pitch, just like a 1-1 series is a really big game to get some momentum, especially on the road here. And I think that we know if we win one of these games, especially this first one, that guarantees us an opportunity to go back home. So there's a lot of things that add up and, you know, make the scenario what it is, but I think the approach stays the same. Things I've learned about, you know, myself over this course is the process of getting ready for the game is always the most stressful part. The anticipation, the nerves, all that stuff settles in, but for me, it all seems to go away once, you know, that first pitch is thrown and we're underway. So, you know, being able to realize that and keep, you know, that in perspective, that, you know, you just got to make it to that first pitch and, you know, stay calm. That's the most difficult part. But once I'm out there, man, I feel like I'm at home.
You, Darvish, and Blake Snell have different approaches to getting guys out than you do, but how much can you glean from watching them in terms of attacking this Phillies lineup?
I think I get a little bit more out of watching the video with Darvish even. You know, he's got 3 different shapes of breaking balls. Mine are pretty similar. I got curveball, slider, and a cutter. He's got 3 different speeds of cutters, 2 different speeds of sliders, 2 curveballs. So it's tough to, you know, to compare. You know, the slider worked for him. It's going to work for me because they are very different pitches. But you see a lot in the tendencies, you know, as far as aggressiveness and the count and, you know, where they're being aggressive, what you can attack them with, you know, late with 2 strikes. And I guess without giving away too much of my game plan, I feel like I have a good idea of what I want to do after watching those 2 games and kind of comparing those notes with the notes that I make personally on my own.
Jesse, back left.
Joe, can you, as someone in the game, can you relate to the kind of season that Josh Hader's had, or is it even too volatile to understand for someone that plays the game as well?
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes through struggles at some point in the year, and he had been somewhat untouchable for the last, you know, 3-4 years, maybe more. Extremely impressive to have that kind of consistency. It's not as easy as he makes it look, but it catches up with everybody at one point or another, and to go from being, you know, the best closing arm in baseball to not being able to get out of a single inning was tough to watch for him. And for us, I mean, no one on our side felt like, we just traded for the best closer and he ain't the best closer anymore. You know, we all knew that he was going to come around. It was just a matter of, you know, weathering that storm. And, you know, he didn't waver once in his self-belief and his confidence. And, you know, it's pretty impressive to see him struggle as hard as he did and then get right back to, you know, that #1 status form that he's been for the last 4 years. And without batting an eye, I mean, he just can continue to go about his business. You never saw the big blow-ups. It was always just kind of trusting in his work and knowing that it was going to come around. I think diving into some of the analytics stuff and the numbers with some of the guys on our team, our analytics team was helpful for him. But ultimately, I think it's just, you know, confidence. You can't give up on yourself. You can't, you know, give in to that, you know, that crappy feeling of getting rocked over and over and struggling to get out of innings. You know, things are going to turn your way at some point or another, and he was very consistent in his routine and his approach.
Tony on the right.
Joe, you seem to thrive in New York in that win or go home. Is there something about these type of environments? Obviously, Philly's going to be, I'm sure, right up there as well. Is there something about these type of environments that really locks you in? Yeah, I mean, I've been beaten down by the crowds at times early on in my postseason career. You know, the crowds really got to me. And I think ultimately it's just I got a way better understanding of myself and how things work and, you know, the certain triggers that I have and what it is that really gets to me, and being able to, you know, have some awareness of what those things are before I go into a moment like this is very helpful. But I don't know, I almost like pitching on the road a little more than I do pitching at home. Something about kind of having your back up against a wall and having everyone, you know, weighing down on you, something about that allows me to tap into a different level. So, yeah, as fun as it is pitching at Petco, I enjoy the runs on the road just as much.
AJ, front left.
Joe, what do you take from that? What do you take from that start against Philadelphia in June? It was a little bit of an outlier for you at the time.
Yeah, I thought I threw the ball pretty well. I think we got into the 6th or 7th maybe, and a couple homers really put the game out of reach. But up until that point, I thought I controlled the zone pretty well. Good approach to the guys. Just as the outing went on, I was tiring and left a few pitches over the heart of the plate. And you know, that happens from time to time. I don't really remember exactly how I was feeling physically at that point in the year, but I think it's really just going to be bearing down, down the stretch of that outing, those last, inning or two of really executing pitches and not leaving those hanging ones over the plate.
Couple on the right. We have Bryce, and then to Kevin.
Hey, Joe, you kind of hinted at this with Hader, but what kind of mental makeup does it take that he displayed reacting to the beginning of his time in San Diego after the deadline when he kind of fell off a cliff to really becoming the guy he'd been almost his whole career the last month and through the playoffs? Mentally, how difficult is it to make a switch like that when things are so opposite?
Oh, man. I mean, I can't even explain, and I really don't even know what he was going through at the time when he's going through it. I know he's hearing it from every angle, from coaches, from, family, from staff. Hang in there, it's going to come around, you're fine, we trust in you. Hey, the last thing he needs is another guy coming up and telling him the same thing. So we were all in his corner and supporting him, but at the same time, as he's turned this thing around and gone down this, this heater again, I'm not going to be the guy to go up and be like, yeah, man, you got to figure it out now, and kind of curse him. So we're just kind of letting him do his thing, we're building him up, we're motivating him and pushing him in the right direction, and he's putting in the work to get the results. So that's something I think down the line, I guess, after this is all over, we'll sit and talk about it, or maybe when we're celebrating next, we'll talk about that. But yeah, it's just impressive to see the way he went through. And also you add on top of that, coming to a new city and being with a new team who's, in dire need of a lockdown arm at the back of the bullpen, and for him to not be able to produce immediately, I know that was, breaking him down inside. So there's a lot of things that even as players you don't really fully recognize until, some time goes by and you start to really analyze what happened and what was going through his mind. But it just goes to show, if you're going to be a closer in this game, you got to have a different mindset than everybody else. You got to be able to, to block things out. You got to be able to move past some failure, and he's done that better than just about anybody I've been around.
For somebody who's played behind you every start that you get to see up close and personal, on one hand, awards aren't that meaningful to some guys, but Manny Machado's not one of the 3 finalists for Gold Glove in the National League at third base. What's your reaction to that? Yeah,
it's hard. The guys he's going up against, there's a lot of really good third basemen, especially nationally, watching Arenado and playing against him down the stretch. He's about as consistent as it gets at third. Manny's every bit deserving of that. I don't know how many errors he made this year compared to Arenado or whoever it is that's going to, get that. Who are the final 3 anyway? Do we know? Brian Hayes? Yeah, another really good third baseman. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I guess, the Gold Glove, he's been so consistent at third base. There's, blunders here and there, just like there is with everybody. But I think the overall impact of him as a player, not just a defensive guy, is what he brings to the table for us. But yeah, that's kind of a guy that you expect to be in the top 3 every year at third base.
Kevin.
It was an eventful season. Unhittable, struggle, contract. What did you take out of the middle part of the season, and kind of how you reworked things, and I guess specifically as to how it helped you to finish so strong and be pitching well now?
Yeah, I kind of going back to what I said earlier, at some point, you're not going to be unhittable all season, and if you do, those are the Cy Young type seasons that, one guy has. Out of all the pitchers in baseball, one guy does that every year, and that's always there as you're growing along. I think I was through 12 or 13 straight, quality starts. And it's always in the back of your mind, yeah, I can keep this going. I feel right. I'm starting to understand myself more and more. But I think down the stretch of the season, the last 4 or 5 outings I had, I think I give up maybe 1 run over the course of those. And I look back at, those middle months where I really struggled. And if I don't go through those struggles and I don't make the adjustments or, try something different, the way I attack hitters, working something a little bit different, using other pitches more often, I don't think I'm as well-rounded of a pitcher now if I don't go through those moments. So as much as you'd like to dominate all year long, sometimes those moments of failure and struggle, help shape you for the biggest moments of the year.
The far left.
Hi, Joe. Manny is not on the finalist, but you guys have 4 finalists for Gold Glove. Your shortstop, second base, center field, right field. Could you describe their defense, how it is reliable?
Yeah, again, another really consistent part of our team, and that was one thing that, we prided ourselves early in the year is that we're not going to make errors. The ball's hit to us, we're going to field the ball, throw the ball, catch the ball. Just ultimately not giving away free outs. When the outs are there, you got to take them, and especially early in the year and through that middle part, we were really struggling to get our bats consistently going. there was an extra emphasis on, really holding it down on the defensive side of the ball and, keeping the runs at a minimum so that, the 1 or 2 swings that we get throughout the course of the game can win us a game. And early on in the year, I think we had a really good record in 1-run ball games and extra inning games. So the defense was a huge part, and it's really been good all year. I mean, I go back to that wild card game in New York that I threw, 3 really good plays by Will at first. Grish makes an unbelievable play in the outfield. And even the stuff that's not directly related to outs, like tracking down balls in the gap and getting to it and getting it in immediately and preventing a guy from, advancing another 90 feet, or hitting the right cutoff guy and not trying to overthrow and get the guy out at third that's tagging up. Instead, keeping the guy at first base and keeping the double play in order, and then us getting the pitch executed and getting the double play on the next one. Those are all big things that sometimes go unnoticed because you're not recording outs with every throw and every play. But that's one thing that I really like as a pitcher is when my outfield hustles to the ball that's hit down the line or in the gap and gets it in as quick as they can. Because if you keep guys on base, I can keep them from scoring. But, if they're advancing, it makes it a lot more difficult. So, our defense has been really good this year.
In the middle on the right side.
Joe, back to something you said earlier about the crowds earlier in your career in the postseason. Does sometimes 2017, in your experience there, just feel like a lifetime ago? Different role, different team, different league, all that? Yeah,
I feel like a different person from then. And at the time, I'd never been in that situation, so there was a lot of excitement, tons and tons of nerves. And I think at the time, I was probably a little bit intimidated of some of the guys around me, not wanting to fail for guys like Verlander and McCann and Beltran, and the names go on and on. Just really wanting to do my job and not really thinking so much about what I have to do it, just how am I going to do it, But like I said, I think understanding myself a little more and knowing how I handle these situations and these types of games, and when things do get sped up, I know how to get them right back under control really quick, and I didn't know how to do those things back then. So it does feel like a lifetime ago, and I feel like I'm a little more capable this time of stepping back and soaking in some of the things that we're experiencing along the way, whereas before it was like blinders on, just next step, next step, next step, and now I'm able to kind of sit back at the end of a series and look back at what we did and how we got here. So,
AJ?
Joe, you've talked about every season you kind of maybe go through a little bit of a rut and you have to pull yourself out of it. How did you do that? How did you go about that process this season to kind of get back to where you are now?
I don't know that it was one thing necessarily. A lot of it's just not being afraid to ask for help. If you're in trouble, sometimes you're lost, and sometimes you don't know what the fix is. And I've gone down the rabbit hole of looking at old video and trying to mimic the movements and get back to who I was. And something that Charlie Morton taught me in that year in 17 was, the more you go back and look at old video and really try to become that old person, the further away you get sometimes, because pitching's a game of evolution, and your body's going to change, your movements are going to change, your health, the way that your body feels is going to change throughout the course of the year. And it's more about adapting and adjusting with what you have and trying to get back to the right feelings more so than trying to mirror the image that you see on film when you're doing really well, compared to where you are now. So a lot of it's just, trial and error, and like I said, asking people for help. I've relied on Ruben a ton this year. I rely on Pete Somerville a lot, helps me with my reports and preparing for these games. So it's really a team of people coming together and, just bouncing things off each other and a little bit of trial and error, and then going out there and just trusting it sometimes.
You guys have prided yourself on your pitching depth really all season. 5 games in 5 days potentially. How do you think you stack up in that kind of aspect right now?
Yeah, good. I don't know what it's going to look like come Game 7, but I assume if it gets to that point, that would probably be me on short rest. But I just can't say enough about Austin Nola and what he's done for our staff. I know we've executed pitches really well, but his ability to navigate a lineup and the education he has on these lineups and what these guys like to do and their tendencies, it puts us in a really good spot to go out there and just put our focus on execution and not worry so much about is this the right pitch at the right time. And he helps us, he knows what guys we can attack early with sinkers, cutters, and get quick outs, which guys we need to be a little more careful with. And I think he's a big piece of why our staff's been as successful as they have this year.
We'll take 2 more quick ones before we get to Bob. We have Hannah in the back, and then here.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
You talked a little bit about how you've changed to let the negativity from the crowd affect you less. Is that something you're doing differently in your preparation or how you are on the mound? What looks different in your start days to do that?
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of giving into it a little bit. You can't avoid it. You can't make it go away. So it's trying to dive into it and, embrace those things. And I think a lot of it, like I said earlier, just goes back to awareness. we do a lot of visualization in the game. I'm sure everyone has their own way of doing it, and a lot of it is usually positive visualization, like seeing yourself dominating, executing all your pitches, going, through the course of the game exactly how you want it to go. I kind of flip things around a little bit, and, like the day before a start, I'll put myself in some uncomfortable situations. What's it going to sound like? What's it going to feel like? What's my mind going to think? What am I going to want to do? All the tendencies that I've had in the past. And it just kind of creates an awareness so that when those moments come up in the game, if you feel like you've been there before, you know how to handle it and you're ready to take it on, as opposed to, visualizing dominating the whole game. In the first inning, you get in a bases loaded jam and it's nothing you expected. Now your heart's racing, you speed up a little bit. So I think it's just awareness, just being aware of anything that could possibly happen and might happen and knowing how to handle it.
One more. This year in the postseason so far, starters are throwing more innings than relievers, which is a change from the past couple of years. I'm just curious if you have a particular theory why?
Guys, all the pitchers are nasty right now. Like everyone in the postseason's, pitching their best baseball. And I don't know. I mean, you look at it down the course of a postseason stretch. The more you can have your starters run out there, the less you have to show the bullpen arms. And I know the bullpen arms are, some of the best arms on the team, but, you look at that Dodgers series, we got a chance to look at some of their bullpen arms early on in the series, and I think it paid off for us down the stretch. We had a really tough time with Almonte, with Vesia, and those are the guys we ended up getting to in the long run in that last game. So, and Bob's a guy that likes to run his starters out there, and we love that as pitchers. We, take a lot of pride in our ability to, stay healthy and stay, maintain the quality of our stuff deep into the game. So if we get a chance, I know everyone in that dugout, on the pitching staff is going to take the ball for that last inning if they get the opportunity.
We'll take one last one up front.
Yeah, I don't know how many times you pitched here. I'm sure it's not going to be like it'll be tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And just, is there anything you can take from that, or anything to take from what you dealt with in New York and other times to pitch in, also when it's 1-1 rather than 0-2, how does that change?
Yeah, I mean, it's real easy to kind of get caught up in the moment. Every stadium's got a different way of going about, getting the crowd going and the music they use and, some of the sound effects that go into play with, 3 balls, like you saw in New York, how loud that gets there at 3 balls, and it's like pressure for the pitcher to execute pitches. So, I mean, I know I keep saying it, but really just having a little bit of awareness of where you're at and what could be coming your way, and ultimately just slowing down and making one pitch at a time. It's just the atmosphere is the only thing that changes. The game's still exactly the same, and I know they're going to be their lineup's going to be just as amped up as I'm going to be on the mound. So it's really going to come down to who can execute better and who can make less mistakes. Maybe 3-4, a couple times with Pittsburgh, and then I think I threw here last year.
Thanks a lot, Joe. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.